I always felt like I really had two choices. One is I can go in a corner and put a blanket over my head and call it a day, which, trust me, there are days where you really wanted to do that. But I have a lot to live for too.
Anne Keegan experienced the unthinkable. She lost her healthy, happy, and kind son Matthew to a rare form of cancer. A devastating loss that just made no sense.
I think that's the big why in life, It's like you're told, if you eat well, if you exercise, then, your probabilities are decreased significantly. And then I look at this individual and in my opinion, checked off all those boxes. And then you're going like, it makes no sense.
Anne is a marketing executive, a mother, and a wife. And in this episode, we discuss how there's no universal playbook for grief, her personal mantra of giving herself grace, and how her type A personality shifted after the loss of her son. As you watch this episode, if you want to support the Matthew Keegan Memorial Scholarship, the link is in the description below. Let's jump in. Thank you for being here, Anne. And it's great to have you.
Also, thanks for having me, and thank you for giving me a voice to my story.
How do you introduce yourself these days?
Oh, it's a really good question. I think the question that I think is, at least at the beginning, was hard to answer was when people said, how many children do you have? I've gotten very comfortable answering that. I have two. I have one that's with me here in this world, but I also have another child who sadly is no longer in this world. But I do carry him in my heart and believe that, he's still with me in many regards, and I think guides me in many ways too. So I'm much more comfortable answering that question. But, I was an executive for most of my career. I was on the founding team of what now is called Zelle. So a lot of people are familiar with the payment product.
Zelle.
Yeah, it's widely used. So have had, been really blessed with just a great career in financial services and, raised two children like any other family in America and like any other, mom, dad, you want to have just healthy, happy kids. So I feel like we were very fortunate and blessed in so many ways, had two healthy babies. And, my son was a varsity tennis player. So from an early age was very active in a sport, became very good at his sport. Also, did really well in school, had a beautiful girlfriend that he met the first day of high school on the school bus. So, you look at the story and you go, wow, this is fantastic. And never in anybody's wildest dreams could we have imagined that, my son would have been diagnosed with cancer at the age of 20. It hit us out of the blue, honestly. He, like a lot of kids that go to college, he wasn't playing tennis as much. So, spent a weekend playing pickleball with one of his very, very best friends who was in town, started complaining of a backache. And then a few months later, was home for Father's Day, and we were celebrating, and he kept complaining about his backache. So we decided, since we had him at home, that, we should probably go get an MRI. And prior to that, he went to several doctors asking, why does my back hurt? And, everybody, because based on his age and being healthy up to that point, everybody just disregarded it as, as you probably pull a muscle or something that over time will go away. So we did go in, I guess fortunately or sadly, on Father's Day to get an MRI, and was absolutely shocked. I'll remember the exact moment when, we found out he had a 7-centimeter tumor wrapped around his spinal cord. So, so it was, I think it was one of those where you're going, okay, he's been a healthy child, young adult. So this would never, this is not going to become something bigger than that. We'll fix it. And I think, for those of your listeners who, are former or current executives, managers in companies and raising families, you just assume that this would never happen to you. So I think hearing the news and just trying to process it was bad enough. But then sadly, I don't think anyone ever told us how bad it was. And I think at the time, I do believe a lot of people felt hopeful that, there's a lot of new treatments available to a lot of patients these days that are battling cancer. So again, we felt he had age on his side. He
Good
had,
man.
a healthy, life. He was active. He ate well. We're like super healthy eaters in our
Good
family.
man.
So I think we just assumed that this would be cured at some point. So, there was just a series of events that happened. And I think that's, in hindsight, looking back, for any family listening, any person listening, I really do think getting, second opinions, third opinions, get as many as you can.
Good man.
We were, at the time, I felt super fortunate to be, um, you know, eligible to go to Mayo Clinic. And we, went there, I think, a little bit blindly. We just assumed
Good
that,
man.
they would have answers for us. So, just the whole story of, 10 months later, he passed away. So we didn't really have a lot of time with him. We would have done things differently had we known how much time we had left with him. So we
Yeah.
again were just going down a treatment plan up until December. So he was diagnosed like in the June time period. And then right through December, he actually was still going to school to put things in
Oh, wow.
perspective. So he was committed to finishing his degree. He had a fantastic, financial services position lined up for him upon graduation. His girlfriend was a pre-med student. So they really, I would say good people really working
Yeah.
hard to make a difference in this world. So it was pretty tragic. On my birthday, ironically, he went in for a routine procedure to get his lung drained, which is common with cancer patients who develop fluid. And they punctured his lung and he coded. So, unfortunately, he went on life support and was never able to come off of it. So, a pretty tragic ending. Again, everything was happening so quickly for us as a family.
Yeah.
We I didn't really have a lot of time to process. We were trying to make decisions on the fly. We were trying to give him the best treatment we possibly could at the time. So yeah, so it's definitely changed our life a lot. I think at that age, because he was 20 at the time, there's a whole circle of young adults around this person. And what we started to
Mhm.
observe too is it was not only impacting our family and him mostly, it was his circle of friends. It was, his girlfriend. It was, people that he was going to school with that didn't know him that well at the time. So at that age, no one's really thinking about their end of days. It's when someone's older,
Yeah.
you plan for things like that. But when you're at that age, I mean, there's, a lot of decisions that you have to make that you're really not, in my opinion, equipped to make. You don't understand a lot of the medical terms. I mean, even as adults, most of us don't. So when you're
Yeah.
20 years old,
Yeah.
it's easy to go, oh yeah, I'll do that because, they told me this might work. Versus really
Mhm.
processing and really thinking through your decisions, and it's really hard when you don't have a lot of time on your hands. So yeah, so it's been
Mhm.
it's been quite the journey. We've definitely gone through, I'd say, a lot of downs, but I feel like as a family, we're definitely on the rise. I think I'm definitely more of a realist when it comes to life. I understand what's in my
Mhm.
control and what's not in my control, and I always felt like I really had two choices. One is, I can go in a corner and put a blanket over my head and call it a day. Which, trust me, there are days where you really wanted to do that, but I
Mhm.
have a lot to live for too. I still have a beautiful daughter who's in college right now. We have a beautiful family. We have a lot in front of us. And I know that he would want us to live our life. So, I always tell people it's not like we're starting a new chapter. I think, the book was finished. We're starting a whole new book and a whole new journey as a family. And as
Yeah.
individuals, I think, I look at my daughter and she makes very mature choices now because of, her experience. I look at his
Yeah.
friends, and until this day, it's going to be 2 years in May that he passed. And his friends are still like, they still come over to visit us. They still talk to us. They share stories. I feel like they still need to talk through things as well. So it's impacted a whole thread of people. So yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Um, I thank you for sharing something so difficult so openly and honestly. And like you said, it's every parent's
It
worst
is to worst
nightmare.
nightmare.
And
It is.
again, I think what hits me is, like we eat organic and we don't really drink, and it's
Yeah,
like, it
exactly. No,
doesn't
it's
sound like
exactly. I
Matthew
know.
was a big partier or
I know.
played sports and
Yep.
kind of, yeah,
Well, I think that's the
that when
big
you
why
said like,
in
oh, this
life,
wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, exactly.
Say
It
that
is.
again.
It's the big. It's. I said it's like the big why in life. You're just sitting there going like,
Yeah.
it's like you're told like, if you eat well, if you exercise, if the if, then your
Mhm.
probabilities are decreased significantly. And then I look at this individual and I go like, he honestly, in my opinion, checked up all those
Yeah.
boxes. And then you're going
I
like,
mean,
it
staying with
makes
your
no
high school
sense.
girlfriend, right? That's a
Oh,
mature.
I know. It's very mature, and he said something pretty profound to me because, I think as any parent, when kids start dating super young, you're always like, oh, well, like you have your whole life in front of you. And he said something
Mm,
because, Mom, when you find the right person, you don't have to keep looking, and
wow.
that
In high
resonated
school, he
with
said that?
me. Yeah, it was just mind blowing. And then,
God, I know
you know,
40-year-olds who don't say
I
that.
know. No, exactly, exactly. And then I gotta tell you, like when we were in the hospital, like we were in ICU for 90 days and it was 24/7. And his girlfriend was there like every day. She came every day. She sat with them. So many of the students were impacted, academically. Their grades went down. They had to drop classes. So it was really sad. And, I guess, one thing that I really hope changes, I really hope that institutions help students in this case with these types of situations. I mean, I will tell you that the university went way beyond on so many levels for us personally. They acknowledged him at the convocation. He was going to be graduating last year, so they recognized him. They celebrated him with us. Our whole family was there, so it was beautiful, and they've really been instrumental, and I think in our healing process. So I give a shout out to Arizona State University. It was the
Yeah.
Barrett Honors College. They've just been phenomenal to us, and they helped us set up a scholarship fund in Matthew's name. So we have a scholarship now that we, um, you know, promote with the university. It's to help students that are either battling cancer themselves or have a family member. One thing that I realized sitting in the hospital was just how challenging it is for people that age. Like I always say, I think there's like St. Jude's hospitals for really young, young children. And
Oh,
then,
yeah.
when you hit 20, like you're kind of in this, I call limbo land. There's really not a
Yeah.
place where I'd say there's a lot of understanding of how to nurture and embrace that age because
Yeah.
they're technically young adults. I did find
Mhm.
it frustrating when we were in the hospital where, we really didn't have as much of a voice as I thought. Like to me, he's still my child, even though,
Mhm.
this individual's, he's 20 years old at the time. But, I think they just, I say the medical institution just assumes you're making your decisions. You're over 18, you're making your
Yeah.
decisions.
Because he's an
And
adult. Like,
he,
technically, he's
he's
making all his own decisions
correct. And
legally. Yeah.
yeah, and I remember when they're like, who do you want to do with your DNR? And his eyes like opened up. He's like, what's a DNR? Like I'd say most
Mhm.
adults have a hard time
Yeah.
expressing that, let alone a 20-year-old. And I'm like, he
Mhm.
doesn't even understand what you're talking about. Like he doesn't
Yeah.
understand what that means. Like not what it means just verbally, but what does that mean from a medical perspective? Like what
Yeah.
happens?
Mm.
So I think
I don't
it's the
understand it. Like,
no, no, it
I can like extrapolate in my head, but
correct.
I've never sat and thought about it.
No, and most
Yeah.
I'd say most people I hopefully don't have to,
Yeah.
but when you're faced with that and you're going like really you're asking this individual, like he doesn't understand half of what's going on right now, and it's like it's a
Mhm.
lot to process even when you're an adult. So
Yeah.
when you're faced with these situations and I was going, I found it ironic because I'm like, he's old enough to make these decisions, yet he's not old enough to pay his medical bills. He's on my medical plan. So I'm going like,
Mhm.
it's just really, it's like I'm going, okay, since I'm paying the medical bills, don't you think I have some voice in some of
Yeah.
this?
Good the consumer.
So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Wow.
So it really, again, you hope you never have to face these situations, but I
Yeah.
definitely came across a lot of these like, wow, can't believe this is how we're set up. So,
Mhm. How did how was Matthew's kind of morale as the cancer progressed?
so I think, again, I felt there wasn't like as much transparency as I think we
Mm,
should have had. And I'm going to say would have liked
yeah,
to have, should have had. I
yeah.
do think there was a period of time where there was, I'd say, hope, again,
Mhm.
based on age, young,
Yeah.
adult, healthy, all this stuff, or health, as healthy as can be, but active again. So I think there was a lot, I think there was a lot of hope that, hey, this, we might be able to do something. So I think, like I said,
Mhm.
he was going to school up until December. And he coded in February. So wasn't that much later that he coded. So he
Yeah.
was in school, but he started, definitely slowing down. But I will say
Mhm.
that, he was a fighter. He truly believed that, he was going to beat this thing, that, and
Mm,
it was sad to watch because he went from, well, it's okay if I can't do this, it's okay if I can't do that, to I remember one of the last things he told me was, "I'm okay if I have to like have a trach for the rest of my life and live in a wheelchair." He goes, "I just want to be here."
mhm.
So just
Yeah.
I think the human spirit of wanting to continue fighting was
Mhm.
just, I think that's what made it so hard and so sad. And I think we tried honestly everything we can. Like, I get that question a lot. Like, oh, do you feel like, are you beating yourself up about something? Like, no, I feel like we really gave it our all plus more. Like, I really do. But I also go,
Yeah.
like, I feel really disenchanted by the fact that, we were able to do that because, of my, my career and things that we did, I did professionally. So, and I had a great health plan. I can't imagine someone doing this without that, financial infrastructure behind us
Yeah.
or behind them.
Mm,
It's really, it's so disenchanting and just really sad. And, I was corresponding with a woman in Texas. So kind of a long story, she got connected to Matthew's girlfriend via Facebook. Her son had kind of a similar story, same age, a little older. So, I connected with her. We talked on the phone, and it was just sad to hear, like, she was like, yeah, like, he needed certain cancer drugs, but because of the medical plan, he couldn't get access to those cancer drugs. And I think that's just like so wrong. Like, it just breaks my heart. Like, you're sitting
mm,
there fighting, and it's not just the patient, it's everybody around that patient. It's a 24/7 fight. Like, you don't stop. To be told that you can't have a certain, treatment because your health plan doesn't cover it. I'm like, I couldn't even imagine. So I feel fortunate that, I had a great healthcare plan. So, I was very fortunate at the time that we had that because, otherwise I don't even know what we do because I felt that was just going through what we did with what we had was too much. So
yeah. And when you reflect back to um like life before he got sick, do you you don't strike me as someone that kind of armchair quarterbacks, I should have done this or I should have done
yeah,
that. Is there any reflection on your kind of like knowing what you were going to, what you have experienced, the loss you've experienced, kind of looking back at the life you had before? And then maybe I'll put a little context around
yeah,
this
yeah,
question, just because, you know, from everything I know about you and what you've shared, you're extremely hardworking, successful. You probably made trade-offs between career and family, when you
mhm,
just assumed that you were going to have, another
yep,
40
yep,
years with your
yep,
son or
yep,
what have
yep,
you and become
yep,
grandparents.
yep, yep.
Do you look back at that, kind of how I chose to live before, and observe anything about your thoughts and your decisions?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And I've asked myself that question so many times. So I think all in all, I'd say no. I feel really blessed again with, my choices that I've made and stuff like that. But I do think, I did make a choice, in 2012 where I did leave a very, high paying, fantastic profession to spend a little bit more time with my children. I'm glad I did that. I
Hmm.
do wish, like, if again, people go, if you knew what you knew now, would you do something differently? Um, I think what I would do differently, and I'm definitely doing it now, is I'm being much more mindful of where I spend my time and who I spend my time with. I think everybody that's listening just can relate. Like, you know how many times have you gone to a happy hour, you're like, "I really don't want to go," or you do something that you're really, but you're like, "Oh, okay, I'm going to do it." And I'm not saying like some things you do because it's the right thing to do, but I think
Yeah.
I'm much more comfortable saying no to things. I'm much more comfortable. Like if I just want to stay home and I give myself grace is probably a better way to explain it. I give myself grace.
Mm,
And I'm okay doing that. Like one of my best
yeah.
friends told me that early on. She's like, just give yourself grace. And it took me a while to process that, but I think that's a really good way of expressing it. I give myself grace. I allow my daughter to give herself grace. Like a lot of times it's like, it's okay to do nothing. Like, don't feel bad about that. Like
Hmm.
I'm an A personality. So I feel like if I'm not
Yeah.
accomplishing something every single
Mhm.
day, I'm
Like
like,
all our listeners.
yeah, I'm like, "Oh my god, like, I need to be doing something." But I've learned it's okay, again, to give yourself some time. It's okay to say no. It's okay to say yes, but I feel like I'm in control of that now. I'm in control of my time as much as I can be. I think there's still things that happen in life that are out of everybody's control, but I'm trying to be much more mindful of that. So I think if I, had, anything to change looking back, is I wish I had given myself a little bit more grace. Like I can't remember how many times I was on a business trip, you're on an airplane and you're like, oh my God, I'm not gonna be home on time or and stuff like that, which, is at the time it's, I was thinking about it, but not as much as I am now. But then I
Yeah.
also have to fast forward and go, had I not made those sacrifices, we wouldn't be where we are now either, financially
Hmm.
or, and in terms of like, I think my son was successful and my daughter is doing really well. I think it's because, we are role models to our children. I think we work hard and we show that grit every single day. So I think,
Yeah.
it's hard to say, I think the one thing
Yeah.
that someone told me that I definitely um, have been embracing more is that, like I was, especially early on, you're just devastated by what happened. So somebody told me, like, there's the moment of being sad, of course, but I think it was also the loss of the future. Like I was mourning what I would never have. Like I will never see him get married. I will never see him have his grandchildren, especially I almost feel like I knew who he was going to marry. He was actually wanting to get married to her in the hospital.
Yeah.
And he said, I'm just
Oh,
going to do a
wow.
shotgun wedding so we can get married and all. So, I mean, they were so in love. So I feel like that part is never going to be there. But somebody also told me like we create our futures like in our minds too. Like the future is
Hmm.
unknown for everybody. And I think just my story itself just proves that. Like never in our wildest dreams could we have ever imagined that we would be in this situation.
Yeah.
And that,
Yeah.
our super healthy baby would have ended up being sick and then like
Hmm.
leaving our world. So yeah, so I think there's a lot of reflection, but like I said, I don't feel as, again, being a personality, I don't beat myself up as much as I used to about, doing
Yeah.
nothing.
I think I appreciate you sharing that very nuanced perspective too. Because when you said, I wish I had given myself more grace in certain moments, but you also said that I don't think you're, for lack of a better, you're Pollyannish, that some of
Hmm.
the trade offs that I made gave my family a better future. Right? That there's a very
Yeah, it's a balancing act. It's really hard.
but a
Like
very like a
there's
true acknowledgement of it. I think sometimes
sure,
people could be like, "Oh, I just wish I'd always given myself grace," but then in that situation, you might not have had the financial resources to know that
correct.
you had given it your all or
Yeah,
support your daughter in however
yeah,
way. And so,
correct. Yeah,
I really appreciate the nuance on that, because I think the nuance of this kind of hard work, type A achiever personality type. And for our regular
yeah,
listeners, you were introduced to me by Steve Malouk, who had
sure.
his own kind of
Hmm.
um, personal reckoning of sorts with that drive. But I think that I really appreciate you saying that, because that's really kind of the genesis of this podcast and these conversations, is that it's not like a clear black and white. We're not trying to
But
say just like,
no, no.
grace all the
I wish it
time,
was.
let it flow. Yeah.
Sure,
And we're
sure.
also not
Well,
saying burn yourself to death. Yeah.
correct. Yeah. No, I think, I mean, again, I think for your listeners, everybody was an A personality listening to this. It's hard. Like, I did stop working. I stopped completely. I'm like, I'm done. I'm retired. I'm never doing this. I'm never going back to a corporate life or any of that ever again. But, I missed it. I was bored. I was like, it's also
Mhm.
part of who I am. Also, like, I have deep roots
Yeah.
in my profession. Like everybody, at
Mhm.
some point, when you're in the industry for a long time, you have deep roots. And I have good connections also. I've had super kind people that I've known for, decades, that I met early on in my profession. So, I don't feel like I'm ready for that. So, I decided to, kickstart and get back into, consulting, but I do it again on my time and on my, like, I work with who I want to work with. I go like, I want adult. I
Mhm.
just want adults in the
Yep.
room. I don't want drama anymore in my life. I'm just trying to do great work for great people, and just
Mhm.
enjoy those wins. But
Yep.
again,
Yeah.
and people are like, how are you going to do that for? I'm like, I don't know. I think I'm going to do it until I feel like it's not time. Like I feel like
Mm.
I'm letting the universe guide me a little bit more. I'm listening
Mhm.
to it. I'm more in tune with the nuances of day to day. I am more into, like, I feel like, when I read stories now of children dying anywhere, like I'll just break down and cry because I just
Yeah.
know the pain that those parents are feeling. But I
Mhm.
also like feel really bad when I see like young adults. When I say young adults, like, 18, 19, 20, 21, like, and I love watching them because they have very little cares of the world on
Mhm.
their shoulder and their days. I'm like, wow, I'd love to be back, be 20 again.
Mhm.
But yeah, so I'm much more aware of things like that.
Mhm. Could you tell us a little bit about what your grieving process looked
Mm.
like? And again, I think for someone in my seat and everyone listening, I don't think we can even come close to understanding, what everything that you're feeling and experiencing. And so, to the extent that
Yeah,
I shared with you
absolutely.
before, and I
Sure.
want our listeners to know that, like, when we connected the first time, I was very upfront. I was like, I don't want this episode to be like a trauma porn episode where it's just like, this
Sure.
is, I want you to share what you want to share. I want to elevate your voice, and I don't want to be prying to like get a soundbite or anything.
Sure. No, no. I know you're not. I really appreciate you for that. No. Yeah. So I always start with, because I've had friends ask me, I've had strangers ask me. I don't think there's a one size fits all. So I'll
Yeah.
just start with that. I think it's a very personal journey. So I think from the very beginning, I was real. I have a stack of books on how to grieve and all
Mhm.
the steps I'm supposed
The
to
type
take.
A playbook for
Yeah, and
grief.
what all the experts tell you, you're going to go through all these stages, and then, oh, you must be in this stage now because you just said this to me. And so I right from the beginning, I'm like, I cannot do any of that. Like, I just need to go and kind of do it my way. And I told my daughter the same thing. It's like, this is a personal journey. So you're going to have to do it your way. But I had
Mhm.
a lot of people, I think, obviously meant well. I was connected with other grieving parents. And I think that was a little bit of an eye opener to me because I met some grieving parents that, lost their child, 10 years ago, 7 years ago, and still carrying a level of sadness, but also bitterness. And I don't think, like, I always say, like, I don't want to be that person. Like, I always go, like, I'm a realist. I'm like, there's nothing I can possibly do right now to bring him back. As much as I would love to, I can't. So early on, like,
Mhm.
as you can imagine, and all your listeners probably will go, yeah, I get this. Or it's like, oh, go see a counselor. You need to go to a grieving counselor. And I was like,
Mhm.
you said something right at the beginning, like, unless you've walked in my shoes, you can't possibly imagine what I'm going through. And you can't possibly imagine what I'm feeling. So early on, we left. We actually went towards your part of the world. We went to Manhattan
Hmm.
Beach. Sorry, my favorite place on earth. So we left and spent some time away. I needed to get away. I needed a reset. I couldn't be in my house. I always say my house looked like a funeral home. We had so many flowers everywhere, and it was beautiful. Like, I mean, everybody was so beautiful to us, but
Yeah.
I was like, I need to get out of here. I really do. We had like medical devices in our house, and it was sad. So we left. I'm a big beach walker, so I just needed to just have that space and just walk and think about everything. So shortly afterwards, I decided to again go back to giving myself grace. I went and got myself a trainer, started going to the gym like 3 hours a week and just pounding it out with weights and just really just clearing my head. I felt that was so good for me, both mentally and physically. Like, I felt it was a channel for me to get a lot of my grief out. It just gave me a time to just be in my zone,
Yeah.
and feel like I wasn't just, withering away in a corner again, grieving.
Hmm.
So I did that early on. I did read a lot. I read a lot about just, I think, looking for signals. There's some great books out there about staying connected with your loved
My
ones.
wife reads a lot of that. She lost her father and started reading a lot of books about
Yeah.
signals with outside her
Yeah,
or
there's something to, and I do, like, I will tell you, like, I to this day still feel him. I know he's there. I ask for advice and I get an answer. So yeah, so early on we had a lot of signs that I felt the
Mhm.
universe were giving us. So I felt that kind of made me start thinking a lot about, like, say, what does the afterlife look like? So I think, like, spiritually, I think I've had a big reset. Grew up
Mhm.
Catholic, went to church. My husband was an altar boy. So,
Mhm.
yeah, we were
Did you raise your
indoctrinated.
kids Catholic?
I'd say, we were, I won't say we were practicing, but I think on paper we were. I mean, I'm just being
Mhm.
honest. We
Yeah.
were big, we were big churchgoers every
Mhm.
Sunday. But I think as I got older, I went to Bible study for many, many years.
Mhm.
I always felt like, okay,
Before
before
Matt
all this
got sick.
happened,
Matt.
yeah. So I definitely, got back into, like, I felt like there was something missing in my life. Again, a
Mhm.
personality, you check off all the boxes. You're like, oh, okay, I'm
Yeah.
checking off all my personal successes, but
Mhm.
like, where's the spiritual side? So I felt empty,
Yeah.
and I felt like I had to kind of regroup, and I wasn't sure that the Catholic Church was going to give me that. So I really figured I'll just study the Bible. I'll just learn everything in there. So you go down this spiritual journey and you try and put some meaning around everything. So I definitely had to go through a lot of a spiritual reset. I think with the signs and the signals we were talking about,
Mhm.
it just made me feel like, okay, like, I know we're part of something bigger. But I
Yeah.
don't have an answer. Like, I can't tell you right now I have an answer to that. I definitely question, like, what is that? Especially when I see what's going on in the world right now, it just, again, kind of gives me a moment to pause and look at just the whole state of the world. So went through a couple of resets there along the way, and then I met with just people that I felt were just good sounding boards. I think I'm blessed to have really good friends and people that listened, and people that were objective to give me
Yeah.
some hope. I will tell you that starting my son's foundation was very instrumental in my healing. One
Mhm.
thing that it does, and somebody said this to me early on when we were setting up this foundation, was what stops to happen is people don't use your child's name anymore in conversation. And when you think about it, like, when you're raising children, then they're off to college and they come home for the holidays. Everyone's like, "Oh, how's Mary Sue, Sally doing?" And you hear their name, and I feel like people were just didn't know what to say. So people wouldn't say anything. Like, I'd meet friends, they just wouldn't say anything. And, one advice I have to everybody is, like, use that child's name, talk to your friends who may have
Yeah.
lost someone and use their name, bring it up, because it's so beautiful to hear. So, we feel fortunate because we give out a scholarship every semester now, and we have students, like,
Wow.
write essays, and then, we get the thank you letters, and it's just so nice to see his name continue. So
Mhm.
that little and it's not a little thing, it's actually a big thing, but it's a little
Yeah.
thing that someone can do to someone who's lost a child is ask to use their name because it's like it's the biggest gift I think a parent has. You actually name your child. So it's that was really meaningful. So, we got involved with that, which I think was part of the healing journey as well. Like I felt like I wanted to do something to help. I'm like, I have to take this tragedy and turn it into something positive. That's again the A personality coming out. Like I can't let this
Yeah.
just be it. This can't be it. And then I think for the longest time, I was like, I need to write a book about story, and I didn't want it to be about a cancer patient. I really wanted it to be meaningful for the world, but someone that I care about a lot just said, it's like, even if you change one life, that's all that really matters. You don't have to change millions of lives. So I know when I talked to Steve about, coming on this podcast, that was something that I figured if I
Yeah.
change one perspective of one person today listening to this, I'll feel like, I'm giving back to the world.
Yeah.
So I feel
Well,
very,
you've changed mine. So you
thank you.
have you've hit the low bar of one. um,
Yay.
so and the low bar obviously said in the most respectful way.
Yes, no, I know. I
Um,
appreciate that.
but yeah, no, I'm just as you're talking, I had two questions. Did I cut you off or as you were
No, you know what?
wrapping?
Yes, I was just gonna say. So I'm at like another stage in that journey. I recently, I had a phenomenal yoga instructor years ago, so I reconnected with my yoga instructor, and I started going back to just restorative yoga. It gives me a chance to meditate and really, think. So I'm spending a little bit more time in that. So I'm just trying again to find these venues where I'm trying to find some answers to, I hate being cliche, but the meaning of life. I think everyone's searching for that. And I think, I feel like maybe I'm doing a little bit more just based on everything that's going on. So yes, I don't think the journey ever ends. But I feel like right now I really want to get my voice out if I can and just again help one person at a time if I can, whatever that is. I don't know what that is. And I really feel like right now I'm just I think that's what I meditate on now is like I just want that path. I'm trying to find that answer and it will come. I have total, faith that it's gonna hit me at one point. But it's interesting. Like I feel like even meeting you, it's just like one little step at a
Yeah,
time.
just one
Uh,
little, and again, Steve introduced us. Look, I met him. I saw a LinkedIn post from one of his coworkers,
yep.
and I mentioned that I'm always looking for people who want to share a story, and 6 weeks later, whatever, 4 weeks
Yeah,
later,
I know. Here
here
we
we
are.
are. So there is a real rant. I mean, in this specific instance, it's just kind of
Mhm.
this random LinkedIn post that a friend texted me
Well,
saying,
and it's
"Hey, you
funny because
might
that's
like
how
this."
I connected with you because I saw his LinkedIn post and I hadn't spoken to him
Hmm.
in a while. And I'm like, I got to call him. And then I thought he knew that
Yeah.
Matthew had passed and he didn't. So we just were like,
Mm,
we talked for a long time about everything. And just, I think, both being a personality and having a very successful career, we're like, wow, like I can't believe we're sitting here having this conversation now. And,
yeah.
but yeah, it's been a good reset in many ways.
I was wondering, so you opted to not go down the grief counselor, therapist route. Is there? You shared a little bit why you made that decision, but I'm curious if you could say more,
Yeah,
and if other
sure.
people in the orbit, whether it's your daughter, your husband, or
Yeah.
Matthew's girlfriend,
I
chose that
felt
same path.
yeah, no, his growth so no, so I'd say there's definitely people in the orbit that went to counseling, before I was even contemplating. I mean, there was a point where I was like, I can't even wrap my head around what I'm doing next, let alone go, yeah, I'm gonna do this, or this. So,
Hmm.
we had some people in our orbit, including Matthew's girlfriend, who did go to counseling. But the feedback they were getting is like, this person doesn't really understand. Like, I think I go there's I think there's a whole gray area of grief at this age. When I say
Yeah.
age, like it's like
Mm,
I think there's a lot of discussion and institutions for younger children. You have an aging parent who's got cancer or whatever terminal illness, but and every grief is bad. Like I lost my
yeah.
mom to an illness, I lost my dad to an illness. So I feel like I've been orphaned for a while, and
Mm,
I do like they were all very different journeys, and they were all very painful at the end. So I think, it's never, losing someone is always painful. But I
Mhm.
do think there's not a lot of like resources and channels for,
Yeah.
someone at that age. And I felt like, so, like, my son's girlfriend, she went through counseling and she was getting frustrated. She goes, they asked me one more time how I'm feeling and they can't even understand. She goes, this was the love of my life. We're not like, I know we're young, but, this was definitely meaningful to us.
Mhm.
So, people can say, well, maybe they had the wrong counselor, but I had other people in our orbit that went to counseling and they all came back like a little bit, again, I'll use the word disenchanted again, a little disenchanted. They didn't feel like it
Mhm.
was necessarily helping them. I felt
Yeah.
talking to my friends was most helpful. Like I go back, I have some really good friends. I think a lot of times it's just, I need someone to listen to me and hear me, and just,
Yeah.
don't judge me. This is what I'm thinking and feeling right now. So I think that was very helpful to me. But again, I'm like I would say, I'm like super A personality. So I felt like I needed to manage me, if that made sense,
Yeah.
and manage me
Yeah.
out of this grief because only I know what I'm feeling. Only I know the love that I had for this child. And I felt, like I said, I feel like, we had a lot of people guiding us around the corners, going, this is
Yeah.
what you, and it's like, this is totally normal for you to feel this way because you're in the X stage of grief. And I'm like,
Mhm.
yeah, but I just took 2 steps back yesterday,
Yeah.
and I guess I think for me it was, again, a personality going, what life do I want moving forward? I think was the question I had to answer. And I think it helped obviously that I have, my daughter. So that helps a lot, to have, that life to celebrate. So that
Yeah.
helped a lot, but it's also like for me, like I think you learn a lot about your friends for sure when you go through something like this. Like there are people that I would have said were like great, great friends, and they're hardly ever around anymore. I have other friends that are there all the time. So it was interesting to see just the dynamic happening when something like this happens in your life. Because let's be honest, it's not fun to sit in a hospital room with somebody for 6, 7, 8 hours. And it wears on you. Yet I had some friends that would come every day. Like we were so fortunate. We had like people bringing us meals every day to the hospital, and people are like, well, do you have a calendar? I'm like, no, the meal just shows up somehow
Mhm.
miraculously. But we're so
Yeah.
grateful. So yeah, so again, I think it's I do believe it's good talking it out. Like I think if you don't have a really close circle, you should find
Mhm.
somebody to talk to. You have to speak to somebody about it. But I felt like I had a good circle of friends, and I'm sure there was probably listeners going like, "Oh, you should have really gone to grief counseling." But I looked into some of the, there's, we get together once a week with other people that are mourning together. It's like there's so many different outlets, and I
Yeah.
probably researched a whole bunch of them at the time, honestly. But I didn't want to sit in a room with other people grieving together. I didn't want to
Yeah.
rehash. I want to move forward.
Yeah.
And me telling you how I feel, and I don't even know who you are, like, I feel like I wanted to, talk to people that were in my circle. And again, I was fortunate. I had a really good group of people.
Yeah.
But if you don't, I was telling them, if you don't have a good group of people, find someone,
Mhm.
like go to counseling. It's totally worth it. Like I'm not
Yeah.
dissing, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing. But for me, I felt like it was a very personal journey, and I always had to do it my way to get to
Mhm.
this point.
I think, yeah, and just hearing you describe it, right? You had the spiritual piece that rekindled. You had the strong
Yeah.
group of friends. You had, your daughter and family members, and so I think, like you said, I think one of the first things you said is just like there's no there's no playbook for this. Everyone experiences this and feels this and moves through it in their own way. One thing I was curious about, you mentioned, and I think you mentioned that friends that you thought would react a certain way may not have shown up a way, and then friends who you wouldn't have expected to show up did show up. I'm curious, do you have a sense of like why that happened?
I mean, I've definitely thought about it a lot. So I think sometimes people don't know what to do. I think people don't
Good.
know what to say. And I think people think mistakenly think, well, I'm just gonna let them reach out if they need anything. Like, I don't want to be in their
Mhm.
space. They're dealing with a lot right now. I don't want to be in the way.
Yeah.
And I get that for a little bit, but I'll tell you, like, this is a true story. I had a friend who just called me out of the blue, and she's like, "I'm at Costco. What do you need?" And I'm like, "I really need toilet paper. We have toilet paper." So I come home, I have this big stack of toilet paper on my doorstep. So it's the little things, like, you don't have to do
Yeah.
a lot, to
Mhm.
be helpful. So I think people just don't know what to do, and I think other people are afraid, like, and I think in other people, it's an inconvenience. I'll just be honest. I think I'll look back at some people, I think it was an inconvenience. I go back to, I don't wanna spend 6 hours on hol I literally have had people come to visit spending 2 minutes and left. They're like, "I can't be here. This is so disturbing." And
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, it is. It's really bad. I know it is. I'm living it 24/7. And it's like, I
Yeah.
really need you to sit here right now and just sit here. Don't say anything. Just sit here and be with me. So I think there's a bit of that. And I think others, I think it just impacted them. I think on a, emotional level where they're like, oh my gosh, like I want to do everything I can. So I think it's, different people react differently.
Yeah.
But I
Mhm.
think now that, we're past all that, I still have some friends that I think still feel like I'm not really sure what to say or do. And I'm
Yeah.
like, it's going to be 2 years in in May.
Mhm.
So if you're not going to come around now, I don't think you probably ever will. And it used to bother me, but now I just, it goes back to I'm
The
just,
grace.
yeah, the grace. Just,
Yeah.
I'm not judging. I'm not asking questions. I'm
Mhm.
just really trying to like just live this life that I have here as much as I can.
I I can relate in part in that my wife lost her dad two Septembers ago, and similar where the people who you thought would be there checking in, and they just weren't. A lot of them weren't there, or a
Yep.
group of
Yeah.
them weren't
Yep.
there,
Yep.
and out of nowhere, these people who you hadn't talked to in months,
Yep.
years,
Yep. Yep.
were there all the time. And one thing that we have observed is with parents, at least, it's a different level, the different again,
Sure.
different set of
Yeah.
circumstances.
Yeah. Sure.
um but I think that one thing, exactly what you said, is like people don't know what to say.
They don't. Yep. It's
And
hard.
so, and I've felt this.
Mhm.
I think I was bad at support. Like I had friends who lost parents before my wife lost her
Mhm.
dad.
Mhm.
And then I had friends who lost parents after.
Yeah. Yep.
And the way that I approached the grief, like supporting my friends, was night and day. I think
Yeah.
the time before, like, I was like, I can't be bothered.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
got a work
Yeah.
meeting at the
Yeah.
time of the
Yeah.
funeral.
Yeah.
Like at this point, if
Yeah.
a friend loses a parent, like I will fly to the funeral.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I
I
made
hear
that
you.
commitment, and
Mhm.
it doesn't
Mhm.
even make sense,
Mhm. Mhm.
because you're like, well, you didn't even know sometimes, like,
Yeah.
I might not even know the parent, but it's like I might not even
Yeah.
talk to the friend
Yes.
at the funeral. But
I'm
I
the same
can,
now. Mhm.
and it took me experiencing through the lens of my wife's father, who I was
Yeah.
very close
Mhm. Mhm.
to be like, oh my. And then there's this, to go back to the grace part, there was this like shame that I felt. I'm like, oh
Yeah.
my, I can't believe I didn't go to my best
Yeah.
friend's
Yeah.
mom's funeral because I had a meeting or
Is
something,
it?
like,
Yeah. Well, that's
and
so
I had
true.
justified it.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's so true. Because I feel the same way. Like now I'm just like, whenever somebody's, person passes, I'm always like, oh my God. Like, and I'm really big
Yeah.
on one thing I'll tell you, it's, people are always like, when I bring you a meal, the meals were so like important to us because again, we
Yeah.
were in this hospital room 24/7, you don't want to eat the hospital food.
Mhm. Yeah.
So,
And it's
just
another
have
decision to make, like,
it
where are we
is,
gonna
and
eat
it
from?
takes time. Like it's a
Yep.
commitment. Like a lot of our friends, were working, so they were working all day, and they had to make a commitment to either stop along the way and pick something up, and then come to the hospital and drop it off, and then you're there in a very sad room. And I mean, there was nothing positive in that experience. I mean, it was a true sacrifice.
Yeah.
And then you had some people that did it night after night after night after night, which was just mind blowing to me. And now I feel the same way. Like to your point, like when I hear someone lost someone dear to them, I'm like, what can I do? Like like my
Yeah.
heart breaks. Like I really like I sit there and I'm like the one bawling in the funeral. Like and people are like, did you know the person? No, I know the person affected and I know how much it's hurting that
Yeah.
person. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
definitely. But you said something. I was like, it's a father versus a child. So I lost my mom, and she was like my rock. I lost my dad, and like when my mom died, I go like I lost my breath. I didn't think I could breathe. And people say, you die of a broken heart. Like I was heartbroken. I never thought I could experience any worse pain than that. Like that was devastating to me. So I do think that, there's lots of different pains out there. I think a child is
Yeah.
different, definitely. I think it's because it's your past, your present, your future. There's so much tied to that. And, as a mom, I gave birth to this child. So there's this
Yeah.
emotional connection to this human being that you don't have necessarily with a parent.
Mhm.
But it's those
Yeah.
some of those, if you're close to a parent, it's devastating. Like I remember being devastated by the loss of my mom. So I don't think it's
Mhm.
I think there's a lot of I think grief is grief and it sucks.
Yeah.
It just
Yeah.
sucks.
I know.
There's
There's no
no
like, yeah,
kind way
there's
to
no like
say it.
scoreboard of grief, like ranking
No.
system, right?
No, there isn't.
Yeah.
There isn't. And I think everybody has a very different journey. Like I don't think there's one
Yeah.
size fits all. I think everybody needs to do what works for them and but do something. Like my advice is do
Yeah.
something. Like when I spoke to some of these parents that I know people introduced to me because they thought it was going to help me, I was almost afraid. I was like, wow, like if that's me 10 years from now, like
Mhm.
it scares me to think that's how I'm going to go down this path. So I think maybe that
Yeah.
was a blessing in disguise because it really woke me up to say I really need to put this in the right perspective and honor it
Mhm.
and do something positive as opposed to doing something negative with it. 'Cause it's really easy. Like there are days where trust me, it's a lot easier to go in my corner, put a blanket over my head and peace out.
Yeah.
It's you know what,
Mhm.
game over. You know what, I'm doing nothing. But I heard stories, and ironically, the individual I was training with lost a brother, which I didn't know at the time. So maybe that was part of my therapy.
Yeah.
But we had a lot of discussions while I was training about, oh my God, like tell me, he walked through like what happened to his parents, and that
Yeah.
story scared me too because we're talking years later now. And his mom just stays at home, and it's really easy to do. I think in the early days you have to force yourself to get out. And it's the hardest thing.
Yeah.
It's the hard because it's like I said, it's not what you want to do. But even if
Mhm.
it's like walk down the street and come back, like little baby steps, it's like little
Yeah.
baby steps at a time. But, like I said, we left, in June. He passed away in May. We left. We left again at Christmas time. We've always spent Christmas at home. I could not do the holidays at home. I'm like, I just have to get out of here. I cannot spend Christmas at home. Didn't do any decorating that year. I was like, I'm never going to do this again. And then sadly,
Mhm.
my daughter was like the year after, she's like, I really want a Christmas tree, which
Yeah.
made me sad. So, so maybe it's a little humorous. I actually threw away my old Christmas tree that we had since the kids were young. I threw away the Christmas decorations. I went out and just made it new, and it feels
Yeah.
better. So it
Maybe, yeah,
feels
maybe that's what you needed, right? That's like the
yeah, I
new.
know. So maybe
Yeah.
that was my therapy. But it,
Yeah.
it definitely helped us a lot. Like I feel like
Mhm.
it's again, it's our new book. It's not a new chapter,
Yeah.
it's our new book. So
Yeah, the new book. And so in this new book, how do you think about continuing to honor Matthew's legacy and, continuing to build, the Keegan family,
yeah,
Marianne's legacy?
thank you. You know, I think I go back to it's like that, one story at a time. I feel like it's, we're so new to, the Matthew Keegan Foundation. So we're getting, students applying for scholarships and, reading the stories just it kind of brings me back to why I can totally relate to stories. I think, to the extent that we can help people through the journey, shed knowledge. That's why, like, I'm always trying to be as transparent as I can about
Yeah.
our journey. There's a lot of things that went sideways for us in our journey, obviously. But I do think that to the extent that, we can help and get the word out any way we can, like I go, if there's one thing I said to you that helps one person, I feel like
Yeah.
it was a good day for me.
Hmm.
So I think that's part of it. I'm trying really hard to like honor the name. I go back to like, I'm happy to
Yeah.
say Matthew Keegan, and talk about his life and what he did in a really short time period. I
Yeah.
feel like he lived life like most people never do. Like at a really
Yeah.
young age, there he had so many accomplishments. He did so much. He traveled a lot. I mean, he did so much in a short time.
Hmm.
And I go like, wow, if somebody like that can do that. And then I think just going to class when he was so sick at the end, just
Yeah.
mind blowing to me, because he was fighting. So I feel like that definitely when people say, oh, I don't have time, or I'm so tired, I had such a long day. Like I try really hard not to ever use that as an excuse for not doing something ever again. Like I want to get the word out. I want to get the voice out. I want to live a life that's, and I'm not going to say purposeful because I think it's a little overused. But I do want to live a life that has awareness, and maybe awareness is a better word. Like become aware of time. Like I'm very aware of time
Hmm.
right now. Scares me
Yeah.
sometimes. But also be aware of people around you that need help. Like, it could be professionally, it could be personally. Make the time. And it's those little things that make a difference. Like I go back to my Costco toilet paper, it's like
Yep.
that little thing. I got home. I was like
Hmm.
a kid on a candy store. I'm like, oh my God, thank you. Because we're getting home so
Hmm.
late at night. We had no time. The grocery stores
Yeah.
were closed. Everything was closed. I was like, but it's the little things. I'm always being like, be mindful of people at work, be mindful of people, your neighbors. It's the little things, and I feel like we're losing a lot of that in our humanity. Like I feel like,
Yeah.
we have to be kinder to each other. And I'm definitely like, I don't judge. Like I say, I think we're all guilty of it. But I'd see somebody in a grocery store and I'd be like, oh my God, like they were so rude. But now I'm going like, you know what? Maybe they're going through something really bad. So I try and give them grace and go, you know what? There might
Yeah.
be a really good reason. Don't judge. So,
Hmm.
I think it's, becoming more aware of my universe, and some of that's
Yeah.
scary. I'm not going to lie. Sometimes I see things I really don't like.
Yep.
But, I always go like, there's always so much I can control. And I think I'm just becoming more aware of having a voice to share, my experience.
Marianne, I want to thank you. I just your honesty, your openness, your vulnerability, just sharing and honoring, Matthew Keegan's legacy and the beautiful human being that he was. And
Thank you.
I'm sure that there are people listening. That I know that there are people that are listening that have grieved, that are grieving, that will grieve. That's for that last one's for
Mhm.
sure.
Yeah,
Um,
sadly, yes.
and the I really do. As someone who kind of for a long time, I just didn't want to think about this topic for anything. My parents,
Mhm.
myself,
Mhm.
people I care about, my kids, and one thing that I have learned through my own grieving process is that like the, death is a part of living, and
Yep.
I think that especially kind of type A driven people can quickly say like, oh, I'm just going to go back into my X, my Y, and
Mhm.
just keep going. And so when people who have that constitution or bias, yet also the other perspective, I think it's truly a gift. And so I really, really do appreciate you and everything that you shared today.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate you for inviting me. So thank you.
My pleasure. And for our if people want to learn more about either Matthew's foundation or you or your work, is there any place you want me to point them to? And we'll put the
Sure.
notes in
I'll,
the.
I'll give you the website. Yes, absolutely. And the purpose is really to help I say struggling students that are going through what Matthew went through. Hopefully there won't be too many of them.
Mm,
But I would say
yeah.
it's the whole family circle that gets impacted. So like last semester we had a young lady who her dad was stage 4 cancer, and she was saying he'll never see me walk on stage during convocation. So
Mm,
she was, studying, not in her home state. So just not being close to her dad who's in the hospital. So you just, it's not these are never good stories, but
Yeah.
they bring some love to some of these students and some
Yeah.
hope and a little bit of financial assistance, obviously. So thank you. Yeah, I would love for you to
Yeah.
do that.
Amazing. Thank you, Marianne.
Thank you.